You're on air.
All righty. We continue this saga at H.E.W. I was in that program doing managerial internal audits of these various discretionary grant and contract programs for 5 years. And then lightning struck in terms of legislation. The education department, proportion of health, education, and welfare, education split off from the old H.E.W. H.E.W. became Health and Human Services, and then the old Office of Education became the Department of Education. Uh, Always looking for challenges and new horizons. I was offered the opportunity of moving over to the new department, but this time was a Jim Dandy. I was put in the office where we would receive audits from the Inspector General audits, where we would receive audits done by certified public accountants, and we would have to determine whether or not the colleges, universities, and educational non for profits at issue and audited owed the government money. Well, I found a lot of them did owe the government some money, either because they didn't document what they did or they spent the money for activities that were not what the grant was for. And I'll never forget, I lucky little me gets an audit of this college down south. And this college was basically using our grant money for its operational expenses, which is a big no no. As a result of audit by the Inspector General of H.E.W., oh yes, they determined that the business manager had misappropriated a lot of those funds. He went to jail, and the president of the college uh, ran to another state to become a fundraising vice president for it. So lucky little me goes down to that college with a team leader, and they give me the sob story. They have no records. I wonder what they did with them, and they don't know how they would ever pay us back. Blah blah boo hoo. And I started digging and doing some research, and I go on a second visit to that college, and the program people who had recommended funding of this college for those discretionary grants was making pronouncements to the local newspaper saying it's all going to be fine, it'll all work out. Yeah, just like I'm going to be a tightrope walker. And I knew something stank. I took the nerve to call the U.S. attorney who had prosecuted the lovely business manager and found a lot of goodies on. And I call him up and I say, Mr. Such and Such, I'm Mr. Such and Such, And lucky little me is being given the task of resolving this order. Heaven help me. And I am dealing in the presence of a program person from our department who wants me to do something that is most unnatural for a good Jewish lad like I. He wants I should believe in the Easter Bunny. At which point you could hear that poor man dying with laughter on the phone, without the phone. And luckily, he was in the same office building I was in. And he says, "Where are you, my Jewish Easter Bunny?" I says, "On the 10th floor." He says, "I'm on the 7th. What suite are you in?" I gave him the number. Go right across the hall and down the staircase to the 7th floor, open yonder 7th floor door, and walk straight ahead. You'll enter my private office, and I'll show you why you should not believe in the Easter Bunny. And he did. And I said, "Would you pretend that you never met me or saw me?" He says, "I'm dumb as dumb can be." And he says, "You probably are going to have a very difficult time with this case. It's highly politically charged." Well, he was right, but I was prepared. I get back to D.C. on Monday, over the weekend. Monday morning, I think at 9:30 in the morning, I get called up on the worn out acrylic carpet of our department controller. Sitting next to me on one side was the audit resolution specialist who looked like he had been initially assigned the case. His experience was dishing money out, establishing budgets. It was not getting money back. And he was a nervous wreck with this case. And then there on the other side was the deputy inspector general of our department. We had representatives from other principal operating components of our department. So they started saying, each of them, one by one, the college only owes this much for this one, this much for this one, this much for that one. And then they get to my discretionary grant programs. And he says they only owe a fraction of what they owe. And I looked at that controller with glee in my eyes and said, "You must be joking, sir." "I was not joking," he responded. "I thought that's what they owed." "Oh, no, on my audit alone. They owe this much." Oh, it's a large sum of for costs that are unallowable on their face, and this much, yes, this much for question costs. In other words, for costs where they had no documentation to prove how they spent the money. So I guess I'm Houdini. I pull a rabbit out of the hat, sir. And at that point, the program person who had made all these pronouncements to the local press down south was going, but. I said, but. No, sir. The buck stops here. And then the controller looks at me and he says, "Well, I have contracting officer authority, and my boss, the assistant secretary, has contracting officer authority." I said, "Are we to understand that you wish to exercise that?" He said, "We haven't decided." "Oh, please let us know when you do decide." Yes, I was a real kick-ass person in those days. So they go. Then somehow in the meeting, this idiot, this blockhead of of a controller of our department asked me to explain to him the difference between a question cost and an unallowable cost. Are you familiar with the McGuffey's reader that virtually all children begin with in elementary school? Here's Dick, here's Jane, see Spot run. I explained the difference on that level. And guess what? The imbecile thanked me. At which point I heard the stomach of the Deputy Inspector General growl. So it just goes on the meeting. At the end of the meeting, he says, he thanks everyone for their advice except guess who? Little me. And he says, I want you. I says, I think pronouns are wonderful, sir, but I have a name. Said, very well, Mr. Clark. I want you to go back to your office and determine exactly how much they owe. I says, they will have to respond to our request for information. When they do, I can assure you, it will be my determination of how much they owe will make the high point of my day. Mm-hmm. And he looked like lightning had struck him at that point. He hated my guts. I wonder why. I'm such a nice fellow. I was already an experienced bureaucrat. I knew what I could say and what I could not say. And they for weeks they were sending his old accountant from the finance office over trying to pick my brain how much the liability would be. You think I gave him the whole picture? No. And guess what? He goes back and without consulting me, they call the college and say, it'll only be this much. Well, it wasn't just this much. And when I called the college and told them exactly what I expected back, let's see, out of 3,676,850 and no cents, I felt that after looking at all available internal information in our department, which that was not easily forthcoming to me by the program office, I thought that they owed $1,400,000. And I'll never forget the controller of that institution of higher education said, this place will close. This school will close. I said, no, not necessarily. If they learn how to manage their business affairs, and raise enough money from their alumni, they might survive. But they're not going to get away with ripping us off. So at the end of 3 years after that, our audit determination was signed off by the college had the unmitigated gall to contact our department and say, we would like to propose the following to resolve our financial liability. They had receivables from students from Nigeria. And in other words, they let these people into that college. They probably give them, authorized for them of student financial aid money. And now these people were back in Nigeria and they had the receivables. Fat Chance collecting it from in Nigeria. That's at which point is when the Titanic of that institution of higher education struck the final iceberg. And I was not surprised at all. But I went on to fight other cases, uh, state education departments who were doing things they shouldn't be doing with our money. I had an interesting career. I'll take a break.